Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast. We are very excited for this one. We are talking Victor Osimhen. We just did an hour of scouting him with clips, as we normally do. You can go check that out for free from the link in the description if you want to by signing up to Patreon for 7 days, and then you can just cancel. Absolutely fine. Just watch it for free. But we are
We'd
here.
love you if you stayed.
I mean, we'd love you to stay, but you can't just cancel. That's what I do. Yes, thank you guys so much for being here. But we're talking Victor Osimhen. We want to talk the deal. We want to talk tactics. We want to take some questions. We want to talk feasibility, all that sort of stuff. I can't believe you wouldn't know who Victor Osimhen is, but there may be a few people out there who don't know who he is. He is a centre forward for Napoli. His contract expires on the June the 30th, 2026. I can read. He last signed a new deal in December, supposedly with a release clause. George, am I correct in saying?
Yeah, I think it's debated between 120 to 130 million euros, but I think it's like 103. Basically Declan Rice money.
We could just crowdfund. Last season, he was up at 15 goals and 3 assists in 25 Serie A appearances. I think the season before was his sort of real big year. And by the way, that was in a really poor year for Napoli, who I think actually missed out on Europe, which is what might be a good year to sign him. Last year, he got 26 goals and 5 assists in 32 Serie A appearances. There are some concerns, just quickly before we get onto the player himself, about his injury history. We sort of covered this in the scouting, didn't we? It is a concern. There's no doubt there, but I think if you look at the worst period of injuries he's ever had, it's like shoulder, COVID, head, calf, cheekbone, COVID. It's a bit of a weird sort of collection of injuries. There's not one injury that keeps repeating until this year, I believe.
Yeah, just this year, I think, is one where his hamstring in the same area kind of went. It's the first time in his career. So, I don't look at that as prone. It's
a concern, but I think that's something we need to sort of put in context. We had a look at the clips and stuff, so you can go check that out. But for those of you who don't know Osimhen, give us a sort of overall idea of the profile.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at comparisons, a lot of people have talked about Drogba, I guess, for his tenacity in the channels, but I do prefer an Adebayor comparison a little bit more. I think
it's a striking resemblance. That was my joke that I forgot to do in the scouting. Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna move on from
that. We're gonna move
on. And he's just he is as a profile. You're looking at somebody that's carries a certain gravity in the channels that very few strikers do, and he worries defenders and worries backlines. His ability to eat ground is really almost second to none. He's got a really big stride and he's physical. He enjoys the contact. He's not a player that shirks from it. He's not somebody that is just a sprinter, so to speak. He is a battler. He's got a little bit of nastiness to him. He's a striker that likes to overload wide, both left and right. I think he's done a little bit left with Kvara because he trusts him a little bit more as just a player with actual quality in that Napoli team. There's very few, so he doesn't feel he needs to help that side, but he will do it. And he's somebody in terms of the link up that is very secure in terms of being an outlet from either a goal kick for even his teammates in terms of dropping in. He's an incredible hold up to hold center backs and hold contact and lay off. Now, I think as a striker, if you're looking for him to be an Ivan Toney, Harry Kane, turn face and play in, then you're going to be utterly disappointed. That's not Victor Osimhen. And in fact, if you're actually looking for somebody to have supernatural ball striking, that's not Victor Osimhen. What you will have, by the way, is supernatural chance generation. So somebody that will create his own transitions from his own ability in movement and living off the shoulder. He will create 3 to 4 individual chances with the goalkeeper per game. No problem. Now, he won't finish all 4. He'll probably finish 2 or 1 at 50%. But he will generate those chances more than anybody on the pitch. And so I think from a kind of a striking perspective, he's also an incredible box presence. His focus is goal bound. In every action that he does, he's very concerned with getting himself as quick as he can to the box. And that's seen in his link up. It's seen in the way that he likes to interact with midfield and how he associates with midfield. He is an incredibly cultured runner in the box. Incredible movement.
His movement's really nice. We saw that in the clips. It's really
nice. Very sharp. And lastly, as an aerial presence, there really are no comparisons in the world. He is the best aerial target, I think, in the world, in terms of not just in midfield, but also just in the box. His his aggression in the way that he attacks situations are special, to his detriment, to his
Yeah,
face,
to his face's detriment. The way honestly, in some of these clips, the way the defenders are panicking, absolute panic in Skywalker, mate. They are absolutely terrified. They are literally terrified in some of these cases, and we want to speak about how he sort of helps us break down mid blocks. But yeah, that aerial presence. Just a couple of things. I think we spoke a little bit about when he's trying to find runners when he's linking up. It sometimes can overcook his passes. Are we going to ask him to do that at Arsenal? I don't think so. But in terms of the pure, I just want to double down on what you said. The pure desire to score goals. This guy, he's got something.
He's
going
maybe
on.
even as a potential weakness, shot cocky. If you can
Yes,
say that,
yeah.
that's one thing. Like, he will take shots from any position,
And
anywhere.
I wanted to sort of pull that out in the stats and stuff. So, for example, you can see he's high on expected goals and sort of non-penalty expected goals. This is a guy who is going to have a lot of chances, I think, as you were saying just now, in terms of, is he the most clinical striker? What is he, a Lewandowski? No, but as at a peak,
Which is weird
but
because he's meeting. If you actually go to the goals, and this is just one thing, people always do this with stats, but I don't think they actually sit there and take it. But look at the goals; it's at 0.63 per 90, and he's generating an XG of around 0.65 per 90. So
shots
he's meeting
total,
XG.
shots total, and shots on target. You can see that we were sort of talking on the scouting, weren't we? Like at Arsenal, I would suggest we have quite a few players who are shot shy. Havertz, I think back to that FA Cup game against Liverpool where Havertz, were we in the white kit? I can't remember. Anyway, I think Liverpool in the purple kit. Anyway, that I remember sitting there in the box and going, shoot, just shoot. And as we're seeing in the Euros, sometimes just having a shot can go. So it's kind of fine to sort of slightly overcorrect things. The passing numbers on sort of first look don't look exciting, but this is one of those things that there are some narratives, as you were kind of mentioning about Victor Osimhen, that he can't pass, that he's got no technical quality. I don't think that's true. I think this is just how he's used at Napoli.
Yeah, and again, his link up is a lot more 1-2 touch. It's in the Dominic Calvert-Lewin, the Scamacca mold, where it's a physical holding off of people, and then it's maybe a layoff for 1 or 2 touches. And he's not somebody that's used as a number 10 in the same way that a Joshua Zirkzee or somebody is. But he's got brilliant control of the ball as a target, that you're not going to worry about not hitting him. In fact, every team he's been on, he's been the lone ranger to basically fight for balls. They actually ruthlessly just pump the ball up to him to deal with and say, Victor, can you deal with that and get it under control and get us into play? And it drags you up the pitch.
Yep. This is another stat that I think we should look at. Shots that lead to another shot attempt, shot creating actions. Again, just the amount he does just fire on sight. I think it's something we want to find at Arsenal. And the amount of times that he has a shot and it will cannon off someone or whatever, cannon. Like, there is a there is a real energy to the way he approaches his sort of box play, which leads to keepers spilling things, a bit of chaos, a bit of, sometimes I think we feel we're camped on the edge of a box. We don't quite know how to break things down. It doesn't feel like the game's quite chaotic enough. It's a bit rigid. We're sort of just pass. This is a player who I think could sort of suit that. Challenges lost is another exciting one in terms of his number of unsuccessful attempts to challenge a dribbling player. I can read. And then touching in the attacking penalty area is the other thing I want to have a look at. This is a player who I think it's fair to say is an outlet and is very much more of a last line running behind channel runner, especially to that right-hand side where his shots from wide are so nice.
No, absolutely. And I think that finishing from the right-hand side is actually really important. For people that don't know the player, he has a particular affinity for finishing off the right-hand side, and he's brilliant at it. I mean, if you send him in the channels from a reverse slip ball, or if you send him for a hunting job in the right-hand side, 9 times out of 10, he will finish from the right-hand side. He's very, very good at that. And he's very good at shooting across his body, which is weird. I think on the left, he does rush his actions a bit more, and he's not as clinical on the left, despite having better angles and opening onto his strong foot. He actually, for some reason, prefers the lack of angle, and he's a lot more clinical in his ball striking. Once he sets himself, it's very strong. He hits the ball very, very hard. I think at times with Osimhen, what you will see, he doesn't set himself properly, and he's just shooting to create a shot at times, and that needs to be tweaked a little bit. But that's part of his shot cocky aspect.
And partly what we need, as we keep saying about sort of overcorrection. Let's have a look at him on the tactics board then. As you bring that up, I just want to talk about what we want to talk about. So we want to talk about two things. I think we've been speaking a lot on the podcast and in various contexts about how we solve this mid-block issue. And, some people, I had someone I was talking to yesterday was sort of saying, well, teams are going to block you. That's going to happen. Fine. Yeah, absolutely fine. And blocks do happen. But I think where we struggled last season, we know as Arsenal fans, the big games that we struggled in were Fulham, where we struggled against them both home and away. We struggled against Aston Villa, both home and away. And we struggled against Porto, both home and away. Yes, we obviously got through that, but I think we would have liked to do that more convincingly in the Champions League. And all of those have the mid-block in common. So I think it's something we need to have a look at in terms of how Osimhen helps us solve the mid-block issue. So I wanted to give you sort of an opportunity to talk that through.
Right. And so if you've got a Victor Osimhen on the back line, really, this is kind of, I'd say, our stronger lineup. We'll talk about how Havertz fits in and how they actually thrive together.
Yeah, we'll come to that in a second. Yep.
Just purely, I think people would argue this is our strongest 11. So I always like trying to say, how does he fit in our strongest 11, right? So we've got brilliant transition control, but with a Victor Osimhen, in terms of the gravity that he's able to peel out wide, not only is he able to kind of run around Martinelli to get him inside, he's perfectly happy making that kind of overlapping run to get Martinelli inside, which
and
will
the
help
timing
with the
is
left
lovely,
hand
which
side.
we saw in the clips. So
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But one thing that you'll notice, he loves the inside run. He loves asking for balls into the channels. And as soon as the ball comes in from a Ben White in this aspect, and Victor Osimhen's crashing the box, this whipped ball in is certified goal at least 2 or 3 times. His ability to really create space and force the line of engagement of the opposition deeper because of his ability to create space and eat ground and physically hold off challenges and become a reference for a target into this run, the near post run. Or even at times, he's so smart that he's able to actually change position. He'll go near post and go far post for a simple tap in. We saw that in the clips as well. He's very intelligent in the manner of his runs, but simply also, when you're in this position, look at Bukayo Saka or even a deep cross from Martin Odegaard, back post. Victor Osimhen and his ability to be an aerial target means that he's going to thrive off those chances. And as well, Martinelli, we didn't really quite talk about it on the tactic video, but I mean, this back post cross from Martinelli to a Victor Osimhen who peels off the back post is going to be brilliant. It's going to be an opportunity for you to force the mid block deep. And that's really, if you're asking me, is he worth £100 million for his technical ability? No, he's worth £100 million in terms of his ability to solve those game states. He creates chances and he creates chaos in the box where just with his run, multiple defenders will be drawn to him, and it creates space elsewhere. If he's going to peel left, it creates space on the right, vice versa as well.
You see him forcing defenders back, and some people might say £100 million for that. Well, hang on a minute. How much would you have paid to win against Villa twice and to win against Fulham twice? And to win it and say, like, what? Okay, what would you pay for that?
Well, and advance.
And that's not the only thing he brings.
And the one thing that people always like to see what is a difference, and I think look at the manner in which Leroy Sané changed Arsenal in the second leg and forced us back. That threat on the counter is something that is really key. I mean, I look at even a Manchester City. When we're talking about that run-in game, and people were saying that we were forced back, and some people were saying that it was a tactic for Arsenal. I don't think City are able to allow Victor Osimhen to live on the shoulder like that, and they wouldn't be that high because of the threat and the ability that he has to carry the team up the pitch and also finish is something that would be scary from an opposition perspective. So this is probably our best team. And I mean, again, I think in this type of area where you've got this type of transition control, Martin Odegaard's much more of a truer 10 who could kind of overload both left and right. Victor Osimhen creates this backboard, this physical reference to knock it down and then spin in behind of an opposition for maybe a back post cross. Or if he does operate as a quick layoff from a midfield like line breaker. He may
Mm.
offer a 1-2 touch out to Bukayo Saka, make the run near post, leaving space for a Martinelli to come
Yeah.
in.
And those 1-2 touches is he absolutely loves them for Napoli. I think it's so good. And I think just looking at that, the only thing I have to add on this is looking at the players around him in terms of, yes, that Marcelli sort of backstick pass that he's really developing now, but also the zones that Saka and Odegaard and White can all hit with their passing. Those types of that quality on the pass, Osimhen is going to absolutely love. So obviously you
Right.
hate Kai Havertz because you want Osimhen to sign. How do we fit Kai Havertz in with all this?
So I'll just really quickly pop this up. This is more of a traditional diamond formation, I think we would argue, in terms of how we would use it. And you could make this a lot more attacking, right? And there's periods where we don't always, for example, a Villa or a Fulham, we don't always need this. And so what you might find is, Martin Odegaard be that right-hand side shuttler. And you might have Kai Havertz as the tip of the diamond working off of Victor Osimhen. And this is where I get excited because I think that this is the perfect collection of individuals. When Havertz cheats right, which he often does, he actually prefers cheating right. Victor Osimhen, from a David Raya long ball, or even from a long ball from Gabriel, Saliba, Timber, he offers that physical reference to knock it to Martin Odegaard. And in the end, Osimhen can peel near post, but it leaves the space for Havertz to peel and to peel onto a strong foot. And that pass is something very much in the Sesko ability, where we were very excited with his opportunity to both peel left and right. But he carries a different level of gravity than Sesko did in terms of his ability to become a physical reference and a physical backboard for a Kai Havertz. Kai Havertz's brilliance is his ability to arrive in the box. But in terms of being a physical presence that's already in the box, that creates space, that occupies defenders, allowing for the Kai Havertz arrival at the top of the box, that's something that both Victor Osimhen and Kai Havertz would thrive off of. And in fact, if I can just talk defensively for a moment here, and I'll bring everybody back, and you'll have maybe your traditional 3-2 that operates. I think when you start to talk about a Kai Havertz and a Martin Odegaard who operate in that higher zone, you're going to see in our traditional 4-4-2 a much bigger team, a team that's much more willing to press, by the
That is a
way.
big team.
It's a big team.
How many is that over 6 foot?
Well, I mean, everybody
Other
bar Martin
than
Odegaard, isn't it? And Timber,
Ode,
of course.
Saka. I think it's Martinelli 6 foot. It might be 5'11". I think Saka's 6 foot.
Saka's 6 foot. Yeah, maybe Martinelli, Timber, and Odegaard. But again, one thing that I think people don't talk about, and I wanted to talk about here, his out of possession work. He is probably one of the most selfless center forwards in the game at this moment. His ability to chase lost causes, to constantly apply pressure, the stuff that Martin Odegaard does, Osimhen could do. And we could save the legs of Martin Odegaard a little bit more. I think Osimhen's a battering ram. And so he's somebody that can make those repeat sprints. He does them constantly. He's perfectly happy to be touchline. He's perfectly happy to be out wide. The way that we press, by the way, is that our wingers move up to force this return ball back. And we ask our midfield to step up, and we ask them to compete for second balls. If it's on the left, it would be Havertz. If it would be on the right, of course, we would have Declan Rice pop up, and you'd have this kind of high press situation occur. And for me, he carries a different level of competitiveness in the duels. And, I don't think you're losing absolutely anything. In fact, I think you're gaining. But when you talk about this 4-4-2 mid block, I think that you're talking about a very springy team, a team that offers quite a bit of threat. And if you are pinned back at any point, a simple long ball out to Victor Osimhen alone, he creates a reference that you're not just winning the second ball, but you're winning the first ball. Victor Osimhen will win this and drag your team up the pitch. And, Bukayo Saka will love it. Martinelli will flood the box. Kai Havertz will flood in this instance. And, you're going to see a situation where this develops, in which off the transition, You're going to see Osimhen recycle it back to either Odegaard or Bukayo Saka, who now have two forwards effectively that can crash the box and hit. So there's a lot of symmetry, I think, with Kai Havertz and Victor Osimhen. They absolutely don't replace one another. And in fact, you could make the argument very, very clearly that they complement each other in the best ways. They give each other the platform that they both prefer.
It is almost too exciting. Yeah, I mean, so many of those dynamics are so interesting. And I think the only thing I want to add is this spring in the athleticism and the aggression that he has. Yeah, is obviously going to help us going forward. But you're right, in terms of the press, I think the competitiveness in the press could go to another level with Victor Osimhen in terms of, you know, how quick he is off the mark, how quickly he can close someone down. I think it's really, really impressive. Let's talk about a few more things. The deal itself is probably where these things start to fall apart. There is supposedly a release clause, I think, as we covered, depending on what you believe. Obviously, De Laurentiis and Antonio Conte. I feel like De Laurentiis and Antonio Conte with no Europe is a
Serie A title.
it's a Serie A title, but it's also a matchbox, whatever the phrase is, touch like paper. I thought you guys know what I mean. It's gonna blow. So my feeling always with this was, I think Osimhen's on a list somewhere. And by the way, people will be saying, why are we talking about this? There are links. I think this summer, my feeling is we've always got used to the Ornsteins and the Romanos, whatever, and that's completely fine. I think Arsenal are keeping their cards extremely close to their chest. In fact, I know they are. So I wouldn't be surprised if local news is the way to have a look at links and stuff. When local news is reporting it, and lots of local news, that's what I'm looking at this summer. I wouldn't be surprised if we look back at the end of the summer and we go, oh yeah, it was the local news to have a look at. That's my sense. But also what you've been saying about the links to Osimhen that have been going on for years. This isn't a player we've just decided is good. This is a player who was, I think you said, at Colney at one point. And
Charles Watts reported in 2021 his agents had come to Colney for talks. Arteta has pursued him in the past.
Yeah. So the idea this is some link we're making up and there's absolutely nothing there, I don't think it's true. I also think this is, and says you also said this as well, that the profile of player, we know about the interest in the Isaks and the Calvert-Lewins and the whoever you want to say over these sort of years, the
Vlahovic,
Tammy Abrahams, etc. In terms of the deal, my sense has been, I imagine Arsenal see him as an option and is on one of the lists somewhere, and was probably a scenario where they went, look, Šeško is probably a baby Osimhen with a bit more growth to do. If we did that plus something else, I think we get where we need to go. Do we want to enter probably what is going to be a summer-long negotiation with Antonio Conte and De Laurentiis? Maybe not as a first option, but maybe we do that now. That's my sense, and I don't know. I've got a feeling about
Osimhen. Look, mate, the only thing that I'll say on the links, I just don't understand when it's a convergence. And so what I mean by that is that it's not just local sources, the Sky Sports of the country, the gossip channels, Il Tempo, Roma, Gazzetta,
Kiss Napoli,
Kiss Napoli, Ray Sport, everybody's saying the same thing from the entire country. There's no smoke, nothing.
Yeah. You're making them up.
I don't know about that, but look, on the player and on the deal, I've been bombarded with questions of why is he £100 million? What is that worth to you? What it's worth to me, very simply, is beating Pep Guardiola, getting the title and having wins in the moments where we struggled last season is worth £100 million to me. If you don't believe me, look at the numbers commercially. It just factually is, by the way, going from second to first is worth £100 million, but advancing from Bayern to the semifinals of the Champions League, competing in the Champions League. Victor Osimhen will not be a one-shot killer. He will not score every chance that you see. That's not something that I'm looking to do. I'm not missing goals. I'm missing moments. Yep. I'm mixing X factor.
And we know that's what the club want as well.
Right. And I'm missing an ability to reliably create chances in areas that we don't reliably create chances in. I'm talking about being a box presence. We don't have a box presence. In fact, we do a lot of cutbacks and we arrive into the box, no problem, but we don't move center backs in a different way. We don't have an aerial target for half space crossing in a mid block. We don't have enough runners that can physically hold off opposing center backs and create doubt in a back line that single-handedly force a mid block into a low block because they're afraid of giving the space for an Osimhen to run into. We don't have that type of player. That is worth £100 million when you buy a player that forces the opposition to play a different way. Yep. That is worth, when you're talking about 55, 60 billion pounds for a Benjamin Sesko, who's a brilliant prospect and will develop those traits, versus somebody who is prime age, won a title, able to do it now, and actively changes the way you play and gives you different tools. That is worth £100 million, if you're asking me.
And isn't in Europe. And I would suggest not only beat Pep, but potentially, if you do it right, you could wrestle that title off Pep. That could be a 3-5 point margin with an Osimhen. I think without this type of player, this is you're hedging your bets. Really, whether you want this player or not, it's this type of player that I think that would be the real thing. A couple of questions to finish us off. One from Wolf_AFC on X, who says attitude of the player. Do we know anything about the attitude?
Yeah, I think he's a bit of a maverick, I don't have a problem.
Yeah. We need that. I think we spoke about this on the pod. There's been some question about, I think he went live on Instagram around the AFCON or whatever. Yeah. There's been loads of stuff. There's been loads of question marks about Victor Osimhen. I will say I'm interested just as an experiment for Arteta to deal with someone like that and see how he does, because at some point in your managerial career, you have to if you want to get to the very top, you're going to have to deal with those players at some point. You can't live in a controlled environment forever. And secondly, I think we need someone who's a bit of a live wire. If we want X Factor, we can't have someone who has the X Factor and is also a very, very nice boy who goes to church on Sundays. Maybe he does, but we have to, and he does. We have to accept that that there is going to be a level of, when you're that sort of player, that sort of talent, you are going to bring a bit of a maverick gene. So you're going to ignore instructions. You're going to say no to someone sometimes, and to some degree, it's okay. It's like we do with you, George, the star of the podcast. Do you know what I mean?
Such a diva.
Such a diva.
Look, ultimately, I ask questions on the pitch. Is he a maverick in the sense that he doesn't work for the team? No. Is he a maverick in the sense that he actively ignores tactical instructions to do his own thing? No. Is he somebody that is incredibly selfless in the way he plays? The runs he makes for his teammates, the runs that he makes out of possession, the runs, by the way, that he makes to help his team come deep and build up, even though it's something he's not comfortable doing. He doesn't like being in those waters. Does he do that, though, because he knows it's what's good for the team? Yes. So the fact that I think he goes online to Instagram Live and is pissed off about a lie, by the way, that was told about him, and didn't disrespect club, didn't disrespect player, didn't disrespect coach.
I love it.
I don't mind. I have no problem with that happening. Yeah. So no, I'm not worried about his attitude whatsoever. In fact, I would say we need a bit of the nastiness if you really want. The way that he gets pissed at himself for missing a chance, his teammates, he wants to get you across the line. And we need a man. We need a man. And I need a man in the way that it gets me over the margins. If I'm
clipping you so hard on that.
I know. Oh God, I walked into something. But when you've got an average age of 23 and change that are now slowly becoming 24, we need somebody with experience that's been at these stages, because we're a team that haven't been at those stages. So we need something that gives us security and reliability in difficult moments.
Final question from Morgan Wu 8 says, since George loves every player, lol, how does he value them? And I want to ask you the serious question, which is the sort of final valuation. But, obviously we talk about talents a lot on here. Where do you put Osimhen in terms of your talents? I think it's, you can talk about players and you can like them and stuff. Hopefully we've given you a good overview of where, this isn't the perfect player. The question is the usage. And I keep banging on about this, but where so many people go wrong with talent ideas, they apply what they're doing exactly now to their team now, and you're not going to be doing the same thing. So it's about what skills does he have and how does that translate to Arsenal? And hopefully we give him a bit of a sort of an idea of where those skills might translate and what we'd be asking him to do. Where do you feel Osimhen is in terms of this summer? Is he absolutely at number one in terms of that forward line? How much would you pay for him? Just give us a sense of that before we finish.
I believe that this Arsenal team need a marquee. It can be in midfield. It can be at striker. I don't value the value in midfield right now. I see no player that I like João Neves a lot, but he's 19. I don't worry about the impact of that.
And Musiala, yes, obviously, but is that happening?
He's not available. That's just not true. And then I look at the number of forwards, and he's the most complete marquee that I see on the market in terms of what we need. Because I look from a perspective of out of possession. I look from a perspective of what he adds to the team. Is he adding a solution to both the left-hand side fluidity as well as the mid-block issue that we faced last season? Undoubtedly. Is he adding something new to the team that we don't have? Yes, in terms of his box presence and aerial ability. It's second to none in the squad and potentially the world. So he's adding individually. And I'm asking myself, what's that worth? And is it worth 2 contract cycles? Like when people talk about these big fees
24.
About the release clause, he's 24 years old, mate. Like, okay, ideally,
25,
I think he's
25.
25, yeah. I think he's an 89 million pound player. And ironically, that's what Arsenal likely value him at. And he's a little bit more expensive than that. But are Napoli pressured into doing it? And by the way, I don't agree that a striker and forwards are naturally going to be more expensive. I mean, they start at 75 million pounds. You know, a midfielder starts at 50. 100 million pounds is not that expensive for a marquee like forward player. If you're looking at Leao, how much is Leao worth? 125 million pounds minimum. He's got 150 million euro release clause. If you, by the way, wanted to peel Marcus Rashford, I know we all hope that we do, but if he was seriously on the market, are we really saying that, you know, they're not asking for 100 million pounds to PSG or something? So it's just like he's in the market of what the other center forwards are being, or not even just center forwards, but the other forward marquees will be asked for. Musiala, by the way, how much do you think Musiala is going for this summer? If he was, 120,
you'd be looking at 110, 120, something like that. Yeah.
So you're competing in the ballpark, and you've got to start to ask yourself feasibility. You've got to start to ask yourself, choose your problems, because that budget is not going away. It will be 100 million pound solution to have a marquee. Yep. And I feel he's the closest guarantee for getting us up the pitch and solving one of the biggest problems in the squad, which is mid blocks and transitions.
Yep. Just to finish off, as I keep saying, I'm boring myself at this point. Choose your problems. Choose your problems, guys. Like, you know, I think you're not going to find the perfect player. So you can sit there and say, oh, I don't like Osimhen for these reasons. Or I don't like Osimhen for that reason. Fine. Show me a player with no problems and I will show you a lie. Like it's just not true. George, pleasure as always. I love how these videos were meant to be like 10-minute like little teasers, and they've now ended up being half-hour full podcasts. But there you go. That's what happens when you like a player. As we say, we did the scouting on for YouTube members and patrons. You can go check the full hour out if you want to go look at that. These will always be free. We're going to be looking at loads of other players over the summer, so let us know any other players you want us to do. We'll be back with a main podcast on Monday. I'm also going to be doing live streams and stuff over the summer if there's anything like news that comes out, sort of breaking news, any sort of that sort of stuff. So we'll be live as well at points over the summer. George, pleasure as always.
Pleasure as always.
Thank you for watching, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.